everybody, thanks for tuning into Elevision. I am joined by a sculptor by the name of Bryan Tedrick up here in Sonoma County, where he has worked for many decades on pieces you might have seen across town, most of them in Northern California, but his work has gone worldwide. Bryan, thank you so much for joining us.
Always a pleasure, Ella.
Well, it's really inspiring to see your pieces, and many people have actually interacted with them for about 10 years. Every year between 2008 and 2016, Burning Man commissioned your pieces in terms of giving you a grant, and a lot of people climbed on them, interacted with them. These are enormous sculptures. Can you tell me a little bit about that work?
Well, Burning Man is unusual in that they have the space to do really large work, and they encourage interactive work. And that is a very difficult thing to do in the normal art world. People are very litigious and worried that they're going to get sued. And so Burning Man has on the back of the ticket that you enter this event at your own risk. And so they sort of have the liability thing covered. And it's never my intention that people get hurt, but there is that possibility when there's something large that is metal and it moves. And so there have been some injuries, which I regret, but it was creatively a fantastic open door to do whatever you want. You know, the sky's the limit. Unlimited scale, unlimited theme, and they paid, for materials at least, not labor, but materials. And so I received, maybe 8 grants over the years, and it really put my name on the map.
Yeah, it's really great exposure. Injuries aside, but that is a question of mine. I mean, how nerve-wracking must it be to know that there is that liability where people are scaling your work on top of it all?
Well, it is nerve-wracking, and I would put post signs to say, please do not climb, but it doesn't do any good out there. People are inebriated and they climb and break the rules. It's sort of that type of person that goes to Burning Man, not conventional people. I did a piece that ended up in the New York Times art section called Portal of Evolution in 2009, and it was a gigantic pair of butterfly wings that 32 feet wide that circulated around, and people would hang from it upside down, and then at every revolution they'd quickly lift their head to avoid getting clunked in the head. And I decided finally not to look.
I was gonna say, you must be closing your eyes.
Yeah, no, but self-preservation is a strong drive, and so I figure people don't want to get hurt, but inevitably, if you're not careful, things can happen. But it was a chance for me to do whatever I wanted to do, so that was really the driving force.
Yeah, risk aside, it must be quite an incredible feeling to see your work on such mass display and people enjoying it in more than one way of just looking at it.
Yes. It's almost like preaching to the choir going out there. I mean, the pieces are really loved, and I'm sort of a rock star for a couple weeks. Which is my typical life is very secluded, and I work alone, and then there's this 2 weeks where I'm just inundated with hordes of people, and all of a sudden I'm a known person, and so it's quite a contrast.
And your work, apart from Burning Man, my understanding is that they also help put it up in public display as well. And so, driving by on the Embarcadero in San Francisco, there's one of your sculptures. So how does that work then, that it's all over California?
Well, Burning Man has a very active program to place work made at Burning Man in the public realm, as well as seeking public art commissions for their artists. Like the first public art commission I got via Burning Man was the Somerset Park in Reno, and then another piece sold and for downtown Reno. It's right on the river, Truckee River, at Bicentennial Park. That's the Portal of Evolution that I mentioned earlier. But they've done it with other artists. Reno seems to be the center of where these public art locations are going. So it's not just myself, but many other artists have placed work there as well. But it's expanding, and now it's in San Francisco. We even had a show at Chatsworth House in England I was invited to via Burning Man, and the list goes on.
And Two of my favorite pieces happen to be some of your larger works. I know you like to describe it as monumental, that's kind of what you enjoy doing, is something larger than life. I believe they're called Lord Snort, which is a massive boar that people might recall from previous years at Burning Man, and then also the Coyote. Can you tell me about those pieces?
Lord Snort was made in 2016, which was the last year I actually went to Burning Man. And I had a client who wanted one for one of his wineries. And so there's no guarantee that he'll actually buy it after the event, but I made the piece, showed it at Burning Man, and then he liked it enough that he bought it for Soda Rock Winery in Healdsburg. Previously, he bought the Coyote, which was made in 2013.
And these are 30-foot tall sculptures.
Oh, almost. I'm trying to remember. 26 feet, I think the Coyote is. Yeah, 26 feet tall. And then the head rotates, the ears catch the wind. So there are kinetic elements. And there's a hollow space in the center. People were able to climb and escape the heat and just hang out inside. And also get on the head and spin around. Well,
it's one thing to make something static and it's another to make it kinetic. How are you able to understand how to make something move like that?
It's basic, very basic physics. Everything has a balance point. And so at that balance point, there's a simple spindle and a bearing. So that's not too complicated. You can add weight to one side or the other until it balances just so. So that's not really, it looks like a trick, but it's not. It's really pretty simple. But it does mean that the piece becomes different every time you look at it because it's in motion. And so there's surprises that you wouldn't get otherwise. And sometimes those surprises may bump you. So you have to be a little bit careful. But it's really fun to do. And then on the Lord Snort, the head articulates, the whole piece pirouettes, and the participants at Burning Man inevitably have to touch the piece and move it. And so there's a group of people that are pushing the Lord Snort around in a circle. And then there's other people up on the head that are pressing it with their foot, making the head go up and down. And then there's 30 other people climbing all over it. So it's quite spectacular, and it seems to give people a lot of joy.
And so it sounds like a lot of these pieces, because of their scale, it's limited in where they can live after the burn, and a lot of times it is the wineries that you live around that support you in purchasing them. Is that right?
Yeah. It's very difficult to sell large work because it's more expensive and there aren't that many places to put it. But
you don't let that stop you.
Well, it has sort of limited what I'm willing to do now. In the early years, I wanted to see what I could do, frankly, and do as large a piece as I could do. And there was no guarantee that I would sell it, but because it sold, then I was able to rationalize doing another one. And then it would sell, and then I rationalized doing another one, and it sold. So I'm still waiting for that next commission before I commit to doing another one, because it does take about 6 months or so of work to do a piece.
That's quite the commitment.
And then there's the money outlay, and I'm not a wealthy person, so I have to be careful about expenditures and so like that. But it is my preference to do larger work. I'm a larger person. I'm not a jeweler type. I've got big hands and 6'4" and all that, and so it's natural for me to work larger, and it's what I prefer to do. And so like I said, I'm hoping for the next commission. Maybe somebody will see your podcast.
There you go.
Yeah.
And so you mainly work with steel, stone, and wood. Is that right? So what gravitated you towards those materials?
Well, my work is obviously too large for a gallery space, an indoor piece. So it's got to be made out of materials that are durable. So the metal is the obvious choice. Wood, I tend to shy away from outdoors because it can burn and deteriorate. But I have incorporated it in areas that are protected by the metal. Stone I don't use that much, but I love stone. Stone and wood I think are more beautiful than steel, just as a material. But with metal, I can work larger and I can work faster. It's fireproof, and it lends itself to a more spontaneous construction method. There's a lot of gluing and screwing and waiting for things to dry with wood, whereas with metal I can weld two pieces together and it's already 20 feet. And so I like to work as freely as possible, as open-endedly as possible. I like to have the opportunity to change my mind en route. And Burning Man's very cool that way, in that they understand the creative process and how artists do change their mind. And in fact, it makes the piece a better piece if you are spontaneous. Anyway, so steel works really well in that regard.
Is that how you approach your work? You don't know what you're about to make? It's that spontaneous?
Well, I get the, like with Burning Man, they want to, like any organization that's giving you money, they want to know what they're going to get for their money. So they do expect a drawing. And so I give them the parameters, the size, but the interior spaces I can play with and sort of make up as I go. I use a lot of found objects, leftover scraps, that sort of thing. And
sustainable art.
So yeah, so I can just play with the interior spaces as long as I keep within the edges, kind of thing.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
But you don't go into it so rigid.
No. I mean, one of the reasons I didn't go into architecture is because of the need to do drawings ahead of time, and you have to build by the plan and don't make any changes. Whereas art is more like jazz. You can make up the notes as you go.
That's beautiful. So you're more of a free spirit.
I want to be, yeah, as much as possible. I like being my own boss, and I like working outdoors, and being able to use my imagination and like that.
And it looks like a lot of what inspires you is from the natural world, but also some fantasy. I know not everything that you make is, a living being that exists in the world. Some of it is from your imagination. What inspires you?
Well, nature, of course. I was taught to say that a long time ago. Just say it's nature that inspires you. But I realized that all of the objects, the living objects on this planet, are creations of the divine, and the most important or most worthy of emulating. And so they are sort of the launching point. Okay, I'm going to do a pig. But there's areas to play within that, or I'm going to do a pair of wings, but there are areas to play within that too. I did a piece called Spread Eagle, which was 36 feet wide and had a 6-foot circle in the center, which ended up being a perfect frame for a human being to stand inside of. And it was a photo op.
I was going to say, it makes for quite the picture.
Yeah, I mean, there were a line of people 20 deep just waiting to get on it, just to have their photo taken.
What's it like to see that? What is it like to see people lining up to interact with and witness your work and see it up close?
Well, it was gratifying. I don't know how else to say that, but I'd get up at dawn, which is when photographers would understand the lighting is best, and the people there. And, I just have this moment of seeing a young Asian girl with her kung fu sword doing a set in the center to the sunrise, and it was just so cool. So the audience really helps complete the work. Yeah. Is one thing I realized, that they are the active elements that circulate through the piece, and so they actually contribute to the betterment of the piece. And so in a sense, the piece is a stage that the people climb on and interact with, and it's a surprise to me to see what people end up doing, and they really end up doing just about anything you can imagine and more. And it actually exceeded my expectations and they go way beyond what I thought people would do. It's not necessarily safe, it's not necessarily PC, but typically the people at Burning Man are creative, and they want to be seen, and they're exhibitionists, and there's there was a time where there were a dozen naked women on Lord Snort, and they told everybody else to get off. We've got some ladies coming on here, and then there were.
That's the photo op.
Yeah, that's the photo op. Yeah. So anyway, lots of juicy things going on those pieces.
Yeah, I've actually never been to Burning Man, and so all of this has to be in my imagination. But for people like myself who haven't had the pleasure, how would you describe what it's like to see this artwork on the playa?
I felt like it was meant for me. It's like I had been doing large work, but having, like I said, a difficult time showing it. I did this big fish for Paradise Ridge Winery, and the owner wanted to put ropes on it and tie it down so it couldn't move. Somebody's going to get hurt. And I thought, well, this destroys the piece, you know? And so to go to Burning Man and to be encouraged to make large work that moves and people interact with it's just you typically go to a museum or a gallery and people say, don't touch the work, don't get involved. So this was a huge step away from conventional, art viewing. And so, like I said, I felt like it was meant for me. It's like they designed this for me. And then I told them that, and they said, it was designed for you. Yeah, so that made me feel like I finally found an art home. And in fact, when you go to Burning Man and they greet you at the gate, they'll say to you, welcome home.
That's a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful feeling.
Yeah.
Any words of inspiration to maybe people who haven't been able to see the type of success that you've experienced, given that art sometimes does not pay, and it's difficult to get someone to believe in your work in order to commission something or to give a grant?
Yeah, I think basically you have to have that drive within yourself. You can't expect other people to pay for your passion. So you have to do it regardless of the outcome. And I know that I'm fortunate to be able to sell anything and sustain my efforts to do more creative work. But it wasn't always that way in the beginning. I've done a lot of construction in my life just to make ends meet. And I always try to choose jobs that are more creative, have more creative, outlets, like gate making was a great opportunity to do something functional and creative. And those were the early days. Like Sunset Magazine in January of '92 did a 4-page feature on my gates.
Wow.
And
people in Sacramento at the convention center, that's one of your larger gates that I walk by. I'm like, that's Bryan's work.
Well, you have a good eye, Ella. And that was my first public art commission in '95 to do the Sacramento Convention Center gates. So the gate making may be a tip for those young people who want to get started. You can be creative doing gates and railings and that kind of thing, but my heart's always been into doing, pure art, higher art. And I do it as much as I can, and fortunately at this point I'm selling more and making enough just to get by.
It's a blessing as an artist, and you're a true one. So thank you so much for meeting with me and sharing your story. I really appreciate it, and congratulations on the continued success.
Thank you, Ella.